All right, we are back in action. Another Saturday. It's October. It's getting serious in the college football streets. That means live before lock at Stochastic. We've got you covered. We're going to break down all these games. We're going to talk about the players and the builds and the price points and everything else you need to know to hopefully make it a profitable Saturday, no matter what you're betting and what you're doing lineup-wise. I'm Ben Rasa. I'm joined, of course, by Matt Gajewski. We're ready to rock. Week 6 already. Conference games. Somewhat atypical of slate. Ask you the same question to start every show. How you feeling about the slate?
Feeling okay. There's a lot of moving parts to it with injuries. So you got to stay at your keyboard today or at your phone if you're at the bar or something watching these games. But yeah, it's going to be a weird one. Seems like there's a lot of news that'll be coming throughout the day.
With that in mind, before we dive into we're going to go position by position. We're going to answer your questions, talk about what we've got going on here at Stochastic, and right off the bat, hit the like button. Appreciate that. Let's run up the likes. 14 games, kind of a mixed bag. Obviously some good totals, some bad totals, some high spreads with blowout equity, some competitive games. Is it a little bit of everything, or is there a theme to this slate now that you're digging in?
I think the theme is just late news, honestly.
Okay. Anyone specific? Is it we're waiting on a couple of players? Is it just a lot of guys sporting a Q tag? What do you see when you talk about the news?
So we don't know on Wegman yet. It looks like he might start over Reed. That's first. I'm just going to go through all the games just quickly and see where they might be. There's Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Singleton's questionable for this game. Garbers for UCLA. They have Rico Flores questionable for that game. Ole Miss is Henry Parrish questionable for the game, as well as backup Matt Jones. There's more. I'm just not privy to them off the top of my head. You're just going to have to be at your computer.
Is it the type of situation? I mean, so certainly some of it is, I guess, like time slot dependent. Like Texas A&M plays right at noon Eastern. We should have that information, correct?
Probably not.
Oh, is that
award-winning? Well, so here's the thing. Award-winning beat reporter from whatever stupid fantasy sports conference gives those awards gave arguably the worst beat reporter in the entire country the best beat reporter award. Like, this guy's just stuffing his face with hot dogs during pregame. So I would not anticipate getting this news. And then Texas A&M is a team that likes to do the gamesmanship stuff too. So maybe not all his fault, just 99%.
Okay. No, that's all right. We'll own the other 1%. And
if you're at the game, let us know.
Yeah, if you're at the game, and I'm sure we got some friends in College Station. If you're there checking it out and you see Wegman in the stands eating a hot dog, we're going to need to know that. That would be important because that's a tough game and whatnot. Anything else on the 14 games that, on a macro level, 2 QBs type slate? I mean, is pricing
definitely
soft?
2 QBs today. It's not soft, but there are a couple guys that are underpriced. So you'll get into like Colin Lacey, the Badger stuff. There's a couple guys that are so underpriced, like you should be jamming QBs, even though they're not really that cheap today.
Fair enough for me. You ready to dive in?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So we're going to start a quarterback. And one of the things when I was poking around prepping for the show that it didn't surprise me, but I just thought there was a couple of price points on the slate that were drastically, I guess you could say, inefficient. And it starts to me with Haynes King. Haynes King at 7,500 was just a spot that I like Georgia Tech quite a bit today. I look at this slate. It's going to be very interesting to see what we get with some of these type of players, just using him kind of as an example. But when we look at the slate as a whole, Milroe at the top, Dart at the top, Drones, Castellanos, I believe, is back. Is there a theme of kind of the tiers of quarterback that you're seeing when you start to build?
If you're playing someone up at the top, it's Milroe. He just projects far and away as the best raw projection on the entire slate. You have to pay for him, and there's certainly risk. Vandy and Alabama are both playing slow and run heavy. Vandy runs that sort of weird option-based offense, and they're well coached, so they're going to come prepared even if they're at a severe talent deficit. With the elevated run rates, you sort of need Alabama to be competitive for Milroe to see his ceiling in terms of carries against Georgia we had Jalen Milroe at 18 designed attempts. He'd never been above 13 before that, and he'd been at some below 10. If the game is not competitive, it will lead to elevated attempts for Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. And then you're just never seeing Bama air it out. They've lived through explosive plays, which they're likely to get a few of them. Milroe is that kind of player, and he's dealing with elite receivers, but there's certainly downside to playing him. We just got news that Garbers is out if you were playing anyone on the 9.5 team total. I wouldn't recommend it, but it just came through.
Okay. So
we already had that projected too.
Yeah. One piece of the puzzle down. When you look at quarterback, a guy like Holstein, Pittsburgh, they've changed that offense. Clearly it's, credit to them. I did not like them coming into the season. It has worked to an extent. They will be swift justice at some point for that team. I promise you. It might not be today against North Carolina. Is that where you look? Who are the quarterbacks that are kind of to the top of the list?
I think you want to look at players in the elite game environment. So there's two of them. There's the Pitt game, and they're playing North Carolina. So you're probably not looking at Criswell. He's just so bad and he's not running. But Holstein does run. Pitt runs that crazy air raid. Both these teams are top 25 in pace. Neither defense particularly scary. So Holstein does stand out. And then the second game environment's that West Virginia game in the afternoon. Neither defense is particularly scary in that game. I think it's tricky with West Virginia, who you play Garrett Green with. Honestly, I don't hate running him just naked by himself. They spread the ball out so much. And he is active on the ground. But on the other side, Alan Bowman, he should be able to make it through an entire game this time around because West Virginia's secondary ranks 131st in the entire country in pass coverage. So while Bowman has been a wizard against the horrible teams on his schedule, he's getting benched against better teams. This should be more the former than the latter. I would rather play Garrett Green, but Bowman's certainly in consideration. But to rank out of this kind of tier, I think you want to look to Garrett Green, Eli Holstein. And then if you're going down a little bit, Tyler Shugg is going to project well. He's just really easy to stack in that game against SMU. The total definitely lacking behind the West Virginia and Pitt games. But Shugg is too cheap. He's mobile if he doesn't fumble on his 50-yard carries. And then you have just the elite stacking partners. Everyone that's a skill position player for Louisville is way too cheap today outside of maybe Brooks, and he's still probably too cheap. So you just get a lot of Louisville naturally because they're the biggest pricing error on the slate.
We had a super chat kind of related to that. Besides Lacey, who certainly checks out, is there another cheap, by Chris Albers, by the way, we really do appreciate it. Is there another cheap player overall that's kind of in that same range?
Man, I'd have to go through all the pricing. Give me a second on this one to answer it. There's definitely options. No one like Lacey's far and away the best guy down there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's what, 3,400? I guess if you're going below that, it's going to be really hard. But you have Jabari Barber for Texas A&M. He's the stone minimum. He's sort of the same mold as Lacey coming off the injury. He's slowly been working his way back with Wegman tentatively projected to start. That should elevate Texas A&M's pass rate because they've just been full-blown rushing with Marcel Reed. If you go up a little bit, there's some more intriguing options. I think Tate Carney is a decent pivot if you're talking flex at 3,800. There's a few guys, but it's just Lacey's such a good play down there. It's really like I'm getting 70% of him in the Sims, which I'm not going to play that much, but just shows you how good of a play he is at ownership still.
Yeah, he jumps off the page. No doubt about it. In terms of quarterbacks, let's dig a little deeper. You mentioned some of those guys in the really good total games. Is there a second tier? I couldn't imagine, is Brady Cook in play? A&M's defense at home is a little suspect. Will Howard, we talk about this every time they play. How much will he go? It's a reasonable spread. You're talking about 17.5, 18, something like that for Ohio State in the shoe against Iowa. And you mentioned to me on betting you over at OddsShopper, Iowa has a couple of really weak points in that defense. Is that enough to put guys like that in play?
I certainly want to play Will Howard in tournaments because of that. You should expect full go, step on the gas Ohio State today for the first time this year. Iowa's been getting pounded in the betting markets. This is approaching 17, which
I'm hitting a little bit of dips there.
Yeah, I'll take it too. It's park kind of around 18 right now. I don't think it tests that number. But in a more competitive game than Ohio State's played all year, they should take the training wheels off Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, and all their elite receivers. Iowa does have weak points. They've benched two of their starters in the secondary repeatedly. They haven't found answers there. It's Xavier Nwankpa and TJ Hall that keep getting benched, and the players that come in have been burned as well. So I don't know if it's the same Iowa defense of old. Iowa's beaten up on some pretty easy teams so far this year, and then they lost to Iowa State. They've shown cracks against teams like Troy. Devontae Ross was burning them for deep touchdowns. Not saying it'll happen. Iowa's defense is still very good, certainly towards the top 20, if not a top 10 unit. But they have cracks, whereas last year and years prior, they had zero cracks.
Any other quarterbacks that are worth talking about as you go up and down this slate?
Okay, let's see here. There's definitely some that are worth talking about. CJ Bailey's really cheap. I don't love playing him against Wake Forest, but there are, like, for as bad as some of the elevated price tags are in this slate, like Colandrea is too expensive. I think Castellanos is too expensive. Same thing with Drones. You have some guys that are at least worth mentioning, kind of like Vandegrift last week, where they put CJ Bailey at 5,100. I mean, he's at least considerable there. Lenore Sellers is at 5,800. He's considerable down there. I'm still probably not going to do it because you can get some cheap backs that are at least in timeshares with upside. And then Colin Lacey, of course, is on the slate. So that's always worth mentioning too. There's Beck. You could play him potentially as an expensive GPP pivot. Same thing with Dart. No one's going to be clicking his name with Milrow right there. But I prefer to live in that sort of 7.5 to 9K range with Eli Holstein being at the top.
Holstein cash viable, I assume.
He is cash viable. My preference is Shug and Green, and it's mainly just the salary. You like, say your pivot is Holstein to Shug, you save 2K, and that goes a long way.
No doubt about it. All right, let's talk about FanDuel. We had a friend of the show, Pierre, asked, who are your kind of two favorite quarterbacks over on FanDuel? Obviously, we've got some different games there. You've been singing their praises, saying electric slates over on FanDuel. Is that, again, the case today?
Yeah, they have a lot of overlap today, but they added 5 night games that are pretty good. So first of all, I got a lot of Holstein. Milrow is very expensive there, but as usual, FanDuel generally a little softer in pricing, which I like that personally. Your lineups look better. You don't have to consider a bunch of dust like you often do on DraftKings. And they have so many games that there's options. It's not like you get funneled into the same builds with people. But Milrow, you can certainly play there, even at the 13.5 price tag. There's a lot of value. Holstein is 11K. He was my most owned quarterback on that site. Green was third. The real differences are 4th, 5th, and 6th. I got Iumaleava for Tennessee, KJ Jefferson for UCF, and Taylon Green for Arkansas as my 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, those are some fascinating games. I got a couple wagers on a couple of those teams, actually shorting them. Not sure I'm sold on that. Going back, one more super chat. Again, appreciate it. We were talking about Penn State a little bit, and certainly they're not at the top of the list in my opinion. But if they really get going and they hammer a team like UCLA, which I definitely think is possible, do you think that one of the backs really consolidates, particularly someone like Katron Allen, or do you still see maybe they start running guys outside of Allen and Singleton, which would make it even worse?
Yeah, they've beaten the snot out of a couple teams this year, and they still don't really give a lot of their backs a lot of work behind Katron and Singleton. So I don't think that's likely, especially with this being a Big Ten game. And it's not like a 40-point spread. It's still like 28. So it's right on the brink. But anyway, I think if one consolidates, it's probably Katron Allen just because Singleton's hurt. I think Singleton plays. And that's the thing with these injury reports is you don't know how hurt he is. Like Singleton talked to the media this week. If he was truly a game time decision or something like that, generally they don't make those players available to the media. Because, I mean, they're going to get asked about it. So I think Singleton plays. I don't think he's really at that much risk of losing his regular workload, but I might be on an island here. I know the injury report scares people. This is a new thing, but I mean, this is also like a gamesmanship thing too. A lot of teams are just playing games with the injury reports. I don't really know if it's meaningful or not.
Anything else for quarterback today?
I don't think so. I think if you're going outside that range, you're getting pretty crazy.
Okay, fair enough. And again, you guys, you've heard me talk about the Sims a lot. If you haven't, obviously these are the tools and the processes that we're all using here at Stochastic. A lot of you may be using it for football or baseball, basketball. College football also has it. Obviously the projections, the ownership, which will get updated. I know there's some wonkiness going on to it right now, but we'll get that all sorted out and everything cleaned up. But that is the type of stuff that can really streamline your process with all these teams and all these games. You need to know who's in and who's out. Those projections are worth their weight in gold. So if you're ever interested in that stuff, the links are below. Really just want to shout that out. It's changed the way I've played all my DFS sports. Couldn't be more happy with the process because it fit right into what I like to do on my own. Just perfect pairing. Now, you mentioned a couple times already that the savings at quarterback, there was an opportunity cost metric because you maybe needed that money to pay up at skill position players. Were you alluding to running backs? And kind of as we take a look from, the guys at the top, Ollie Gordon, who's once again the carcass of Ollie Gordon's up there. You've got Hampton and Reed, who's been unbelievable. I mean, who are those running backs that right off the bat jumped out?
Can you ask me about specific players? We had Grayson McCall announced as the starter, so I have to update projections. It's going to be hard for me to compare prices versus projections right now, but I can give you my opinion on these players. This is the tough part about doing a show while you're on projections at the same time, but it shouldn't take me long.
No, you do that. And yeah, I mean, some of the guys just right off the bat that I wanted to dig into are kind of at the top. Some of them are in line with those big games. So the first guy right now I clearly want to talk about is Amari Hampton. The guy had 29 carries for 103 yards against Duke. He added another 4 receptions. That's serious workload. Against JMU, 3 touchdowns, over 20 touches. Against made-up schools, 25 touches. How good is he at 8,700? Is that a guy that you plan to be over or under on?
I plan to be overweight on Amari Hampton. I don't think you're really dealing with any risk outside of injury. Jacoby Criswell has been so bad, and honestly, this is probably just a positive evaluation from the staff. They know what they have, and that's a limited quarterback. Amari Hampton's really been the only bright spot for their offense. If you isolate pass blocking versus run blocking, they're significantly better in run blocking for some reason, and they've just leaned into that, whether it's been efficient or not. So even if they decide to take away, maybe stack 6 in the box, try to remove Amari Hampton, I mean, you're probably looking at 30 touches today. They're just flat out not involving anyone else.
And that's just, again, volume has been king, and it kind of leads me maybe not into the next guy, but another guy I'm just going to break it down kind of as you're smoothing things out behind the scenes as well. I mentioned that Pittsburgh has been awesome, and there's no doubt that there's several reasons for that, but one of them has to be Desmond Reed. He really has been good. He's scored in every game, and it's not just in the backfield. The guy's got 3 touchdowns through the air. Now he's got only 13 receptions, so he's probably running a little hot there, but you just look at his really ability. He didn't play last week. First of all, I want to make sure he is in fact good to go. And if he is, are you looking to pick up the pieces and buy on him once again?
Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. He didn't play. They came off their bye, and they played an FCS team, so they didn't need to use him. The real wrinkle is they got back Rodney Hammond, who was suspended. I think he was actually ineligible, but whatever happened, it's resolved and he's back. If anything, that just gives them a chance to complement Reed, and he's been hurt. So they might try to do this, but at this point, I honestly don't know if Reed is a player you can take off the field. He's been so good. This Pitt offensive line has been dreadful. If you look at yards created, yards blocked, they're not great. And it's literally just Reed, force missed tackles, yards after contact per attempt, creating everything on his own. And he's also a known commodity in this offense. He transferred with the OC. Rodney Hammond is a guy that is a holdover from that Stone Age offense Pitt was running last year. So I don't know if he's a great fit, but that's at least a concern with him. You don't have those concerns with other players.
So a couple of those other players, kind of as I bounce around a little bit, I'm going to actually isolate a full game for you. And the game is Ole Miss in South Carolina. So these are some of the maybe pay down backs that I think might be worthwhile. Raheem Sanders, obviously, he's nursing an ankle, but it looks like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to be busy today. And then on the other side with Ole Miss, you had talked to me about how many different backs they ultimately have. Parrish is one of those guys. Is he expected to play? And if these guys are in, are you confidently going to them, or do you think that they're really on the outside looking in?
Both are expected to play. Raheem Sanders had 1 carry, and then he was pulled from the game, but he's been probable all week. Parrish is a little different, but he's kind of like Katron Allen, where he was available to the media and stuff, and they were asking him directly about his injury. Everything he said is that he feels good. I mean, this is a competitive SEC game. It's within 10 points. They just came off a loss. They can't
Yeah, they
lose
need
any
this
more
game.
games.
Yeah,
They
they
need
need
this
it.
game. And South Carolina is better than we thought, especially on defense. So I fully expect Parrish to play. I'm trying to build in some flexibility with my lineups and use players in the flex from the late window, whether that's ETN, Parrish, so be it, in case something just pops and then you get a late news thing and you can load up on a player who's underpriced or something like that. But these players are more sprinklings than anything else, just because the players at the top, the chalk, are such good plays, being Hampton, and I think Tawi Walker very much deserves that as well.
One more guy that I want to ask you, where does he belong in the guys that you just mentioned or somewhere else? And they've been a disappointment. They just lost on I'd say a controversial play against Miami, is my boy, Mr. Tootin. He had 19 for 141 and a touchdown against that Miami front, added another handful of receptions. Is that the type of volume that we can look for against a Stanford front that I don't think that they need to fear?
They definitely don't need to fear them. And yeah, he has some of the best volume. It's not Omari and Hampton level, but still 20 and a half touches per game, averaging over 100 yards on the ground. He participates in almost every single route for this team, coming off a 5-target game. Really, the only thing you worry about is the resistance for Stanford, who's a team the market's been overrating consistently. They are not covering a lot of games. And then Virginia Tech's only an 8.5-point favorite. So, I mean, it doesn't project to get out of hand, but that's always a worry when Stanford's on the card.
Yeah, Stanford, there are some tough scenes out there, no doubt. But while I'm on the game, I know I'm kind of just jumping around, but there's a method to my madness. Micah Ford, he's 4,100. Now, he had 15 carries, and he did cross the 100-yard territory against a Clemson front. Was that just an admiration? Did they find something there? Is this the guy maybe to reciprocate in that same game if you wanted to pay down at running back?
I didn't dive into that box score super intensely, but I know Clemson is very much just taking their foot off the gas at the end of games. So that's when most of their production allowed has been. Not sure if that's entirely the case, but at least worth mentioning. They've been ping-ponging their workloads all over the place, riding the pure hot hand. So I'm not 100% sure this remains consistent. That's my biggest worry with him. He is cheap, but I mean, I think I'd rather play some other players at running back that are cheaper that I think are more bankable.
Is Emmett Johnson one of them?
Emmett Johnson's not one of them. He's going to be in a 3-way committee. Tate Carney's one for Wake Forest. If you just isolate their backfield carries over the last couple games, they do run the hot hand for Wake as well, but he outcarried Damon Claiborne 17-12 in their last game. They don't throw to running backs a lot, so I'm not really worried about pass game roles for either. They tied each other with 2 targets, which is honestly pretty good for a Wake back entirely. And then I think Cade Giacomelli is worth some dart throws in Wisconsin. I don't know how the backfield shakes out. Previously, when Tawi was hurt and it was Ches leading the backfield, we saw Giacomelli pop for 8 carries. There were also some coach speak words this week that the Badgers might ride one back. They've done that in the past. They've had success with it. They have not done it this year. So perhaps it is just the Tawi show, but I mean, you're not paying anything for Giacomelli. He's at least worth a sprinkling down there. And Isaac Brown, of course, for Louisville. He's cheap as a lead back of a 3-way committee.
Louisville is just now don't hate on SMU. I do think they have a fighting chance today in life. But one last team that I want to talk about, and then again we can flip the FanDuel. We'll take some questions, and obviously we got plenty more to talk about on this slate. Bama's coming off just a straight bananas win, maybe the game of the year. Really, really cool stuff. Now you got to go to Vanderbilt. Nobody wants to do that. They're obviously still sizable favorites. What do you expect from that backfield? Obviously, a guy like Jam Miller, Haynes, are they values? Do they cannibalize each other? What is Alabama going to do today?
They're going to run a 2-way committee, and it might be bad if it's competitive because then Milroe is going to lead it. I don't have a lot of interest.
Yeah, the Milroe situation does make it a little tricky. No doubt about that. Let's see what else here. Just digging in. No, not going to mention. What about, all right, my last guy, because I just love saying this guy's name. Is a tough matchup, though. Rutgers is quietly just doing their thing. Mr. Manangai. He's another one. Volume won't be an issue. 27, 26, and 25 carries in the last 3 weeks. Obviously, efficiency-wise, it's not the best, but the guy's got 6 touchdowns already. You think they can have success against Nebraska's front?
I think he'll have some success. I'm not sure it matters. He's gonna carry 29 times.
So much volume. So much volume. I mean, you look at some of these guys, it really is just about that volume. I would just say this, giving a peek to Odd Chopper and that side of it, the touchdown equity for a team like Rutgers, it's not zero, obviously, but there are just some backs with that type of volume in games with totals that are just so much better. And so I look at that. I think for me, if I was allocating that type of money, I would rather go up and get a guy like Hampton. I'd be fine with Tootin. You mentioned, Georgia, who's been known going all the way back to Sony Michel and Nick Chubb and those guys. It seems like they are always running a committee of backs. ETN, I still think, is the guy there. Now, the game against Bama, it got off the rails, so I didn't think he really got a fair shake. He had 12 carries for 55 yards, 4.6 yards per carry and a pair of receptions. But against Kentucky in a very competitive game, he had 19 for 79. Again, not the most efficient, but I still like that. ETN at flat 7 could be a spot, even though both of us agree, even though we're poor because of Auburn, that defense is very good.
They are very good. Two more news. I got to update this.
Oh.
Trell Harris for Virginia out. Chris Tyree out. That's two of their top 3 receivers. I don't know who takes over yet. I will be digging and updating as we speak.
Is that, can I just ask you, is that expected news?
No, this is not expected. Last week, Trell Harris missed, but all the reporting this week is that he would play. He's been practicing, so this is a surprise, and there's been nothing on Tyree. So this is completely unexpected.
Good. That's why people who, well, not good for you, but for the show, again, these are the edges that not everyone's going to be paying attention to this stuff. The value at wide receiver could be immense when we get there in a little bit. Let's see what other running backs that I can decipher here. Mr. Claiborne. Yeah, he's definitely someone I think you could go to against NC State. Guy's got double-digit carries in all 4 games. He's got 7 receptions on the year, 4 touchdowns on the year. Louisiana Lafayette's no good. But other than that, really against Ole Miss, he got stifled. He had 11 carries for 20 yards. Other than that, though, very effective. You touched on Claiborne briefly. Give me a yay or nay for him.
I'm worried that they might be giving more work to Carney after their last game. The carry distribution was 17-12, but that has kind of just been a hot hand situation going back years now for that team. So I'm not 100% confident that either one of them are the stone lock that the projections might indicate. There's just some volatility there that they might not capture. Who the hell is going to play receiver for Virginia today?
I'm going to do it. I'm going down to Charlottesville. I'm going to step up. Yeah, I mean, this really, though, when value like that opens up, it could be very fascinating in terms of allocating more salary to these other positions. If you have guys at like the flat min who are going to be running a ton of routes, maybe you can pay up for some of these other guys.
Yeah, it's going to be greasy. I'm not 100% sure yet. There's 3 candidates. They're Jaden Gibson, Andre Green, and Cameron Courtney. I'm guessing it's Gibson and Green.
Sounds kind of shady, man. Not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's very shady.
Very shady.
Imagine trying to project this thing and you have no idea.
You're telling me.
The real answer is Malachi Fields is going to have 100 targets.
I mean, so is that just like launch guys like that right into cash?
He's expensive, so you're still going to have to make an opportunity cost decision, but I mean, he's much better for sure.
What a fascinating.
I mean, what is the, can you tell, I'm doing this in the back, and can you tell me the price on Jaden Gibson and Andre Green?
Sure. Let's see. Mr. Gibson.
They're not going to be in projections, or if they are, they're like minuscule projections.
4.1K for Jaden Gibson, who has a whopping 2 catches and 32 yards on the year.
What the hell is that price?
And then who was the second guy? I'm sorry.
Andre Green Jr.
Andre Green Jr. He is 3,700. He has as many catches on the year as me. And so that's the type of players that we're going to be going into today. I kind of, like I said, I know it's getting a little bananas. I like a show like this. This is in real time, us updating things, trying to decipher who is going to be. Yeah, I know you don't, obviously, but just Virginia, this is a fascinating situation because it's not a game that has blowout equity, far from it. These guys could be firmly in play.
They could be. I mean, I just like the one guy has a 2.5% target per route rate. He's a pure wind sprinter. But that's because they had two of their top three receivers for most of this time. So I don't know.
What about Tyler Neville?
He's a
He's
tight
all
end.
tight end. Is there, I mean,
He splits with Sackett Wood. So I'm not sure he's affected. I mean, maybe they go more 12. They're not really a 12 team. They run this like super fast three wide offense.
a lot of different names out there. I'll tighten up running back here. Like I said, you mentioned the overlap between FanDuel and DraftKings. Not a lot of different names out there. RJ Harvey, in the night game, obviously UCF really did not look good against Colorado, but it's still a potent offense. They want to play from ahead. If they're able to get that running game going, certainly more dangerous than we saw Samson. Arkansas's front, I don't fear them. I expect Tennessee to have success tonight. Do you?
Yeah, I bet them.
Okay.
All right, I'm uploading my best guess at this Virginia wide receiver room right now. They still don't project that well, honestly. It's Malachi Fields or bust kind of, but man, this is not the news I was expecting. We're playing two guys that have like handful of snaps all year, or at least projecting them stars, probably not playing them.
World we live in, the crazy game of DFS.
It's week 6, man. This is probably going to be a weekly occurrence from here on out, now that we're in the thick of things.
Craziness. All right. Let's move to wide receiver. Before we do that, I will give a quick shout out to some of this news. Definitely could affect the betting markets, particularly like when it's quarterbacks and stuff. If you're looking at player props, if you're looking at spreads, if you just have questions, the best way, be part of the community. If you're in a state that maybe makes some wagers, if you haven't been over to OddsShopper and specifically our Tails marketplace, it's worth checking out at the very least. What it is, I give you a 10-second pitch here. It's just more access to guys like me, guys like Matt, all of our team, external content creators as well. You get in their Discords, you get access to their picks. It's fully customizable. The alerts go right to your phone if you want it. So if I drop 5 spreads, if I do that on a YouTube video, the lines are going to move. Everyone's going to see it. You'll have access to that beforehand. And that's so crucial for someone like Matt, who's dropping all sorts of plays throughout the week. The closing line value is immense and it adds up. So if you're interested in that, the links are below. Come on in, even if it's just for the weekend, come in for a week, see how you do. If you love it, stay. If not, you got to see what we're about at Tails. We'd love to have you as part of the team again. Very reasonable and an absolute value add if you enjoy betting on sports, specifically college football, but all different things. You mentioned Alex himself is in there just taking down WNBA like I've never seen. It's bananas. That's neither here nor there, though. Let's talk about wide receiver. Clearly, we got some news. You mentioned at the top of the show a guy like Lacey. Point per dollar, do you think a guy like Lacey is the best play on the slate?
Yeah, he's your first guy in cash, without a doubt.
From there, where do we go, though? Is there kind of an option of 1B? Is it a mix of guys, hit wide receivers, Old Miss Trey Harris? Then we're going to talk Stribling and Presley, just like we always do in Owens. I mean, same story of Oklahoma State. What do you see when you look at wide receiver in general?
I think you want to pay up once. My preferred guy is Trey Harris. He's just been an absolute monster. He's averaging 160 yards per game. And then I like playing one receiver that's some part of your stack. There's a lot of good options. Stribling, Rashad Owens, Brennan Presley for the Oklahoma State stacks. West Virginia is really hard on the other side of that game to stack, that is. But then there's some interesting contrarian options. All the Ohio State guys are affordable. The Alabama guys are modestly priced. Stacking Pitt is tricky, but Kanata Mumfield, Raphael Williams, and Kenny Johnson are in that range. You can always pivot off of Colin Lacey, go up to Ja'Cory Brooks. I think the most pertinent question on the entire slate is, what do you do with the contrarian studs that have some sort of game environment problem or quarterback problem? Luther Burden, game total, their team total, I suppose, is 23. That's a problem. Kevin Concepcion, now he's playing with McCall. I honestly haven't had a chance to go back and look and see what that did to his projection. I assume it's a little bit better just because McCall's stats have been better than Bailey's, but their total still, like their game total still not great. Wake has been getting pounded in the market. They're 28.25. So I guess he's probably more in play than he was. But yeah, I think the contrarian expensive options are the most interesting on this slate because a lot is going to be going to Trey Harris.
I haven't seen it confirmed. We did get a message that said Wegman starting, but
Yeah, I saw that too. That we have Wegman projected starting, so there's nothing for me to do.
No, but I don't like whatever. That's another show for another time. I don't really agree with that, but
Wegman starting?
yeah, I don't think that's the best idea. What
I
what
don't
do I
know.
know? We'll find out today. They better win this game. They should win it. They're at home. What do we got for wide receivers elsewhere? I mean, you mentioned the stacking options. Is this the first time we've really got to talk about these guys besides a cursory look? I want to ask you about Ibuka and certainly this freshman who just looks unbelievable. Clearly, if you're playing Will Howard, you're going to use these guys. Do you think you can use them as one-offs, though? And I'm alluding, of course, to the wide receivers for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think you can use them as one-offs. I like using them in stacks too. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be something that is too owned. So I'll definitely be trying to do that. They're very talented. We mentioned the cracks in Iowa. It's live at least. It's not going to project super well, but you could definitely do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at some of these other guys, I mean, we know that Lacey's going to be very, very popular, but then there's I'd say a pretty moderate ownership across the board. Just looking at this, one guy, he is up there, and he is, I guess you could say, value would be a Commodore and Mr. Stowers. Obviously they're going to be throwing, they're going to be losing. Flat 4, and no touchdown equity might not be there, but is volume good enough to put a Vanderbilt wide receiver in play?
I can't get there. I'm playing a little bit, but I just can't get there. Not in a lot of lineups, at least.
I hear you. That is a cringy situation. We had a question from Chad. Would you rather have Luther on FanDuel? Would you rather have Luther Burden and Noah Thomas or Malachi Fields and Kanate Mumfield?
Who is the first one again?
Luther Burden and Noah Thomas.
Okay.
Or Malachi Fields and Kanata Mumfield.
The Malachi Fields side.
Is this a 3 running back or 4 wide receiver slate?
Getting mostly 3 running back.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Howie with Ches out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can do that. All right, let's see. Who else do I want to ask you about? This is an interesting question. Maybe you talked about it. Honestly, my memory is shot. But with NC State, obviously we got some news there. One thing that has been super consistent for them has been Concepcion on the outside. Do you think this affects him at all, or is he still just that guy?
I think it should be better. It's hard to say what they do with their offense. Their OC has been there now, and he's played fast at times. He's played pass heavy at times, but he's very cognizant of who's on the field. My hesitation, this could go 2 ways. One, you think McCall's a lot better. They bring their offense up to speed, better pace, better pass rate, because they were starting a freshman. But prior to that, McCall was awful. So I don't really know if they're going to embrace this or not. I think his efficiency stats alone are a little bit better than what we saw from Bailey. So you should see slight bumps to Concepcion, but there is room for potentially a little bit more growth there than maybe we would initially anticipate.
Other wide receivers, I mean, again, there's obviously a lot of just random flyers there. You're trying to get access to some of these good games. You mentioned, what about a guy like Jamal Banks, pay down sub 4K?
Don't love the Nebraska guy. I like Lewis Bond, though, for Boston College. He has like a 36% target share. Absolutely insane.
4,500. If you were just going 1v1, would you go him or Will Pauling, who's also 4,500?
We saw the Badgers just take the air out of the ball. I don't have the rate in front of me, but they dropped their pass rate to like 40%. I'm really nervous for anyone who catches the ball for Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's an evergreen statement. It's been that way for a couple decades. So
Lock aside, even if they were throwing and Locke is throwing it to you, that should be concern enough. But now you're giving Locke limited attempts for Pauling. I don't know, man.
That's not it. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it because it's on the other side of the game. You don't have any Hudson Card love, do you?
No.
No. Okay. Me neither. But Purdue's got some issues. We had a question about Claiborne specifically. I don't know if you dug into this a ton. We said, did Claiborne only lose snaps to the backup last week because he left the field during the first half and then came back? Or do you think that it's a larger issue and that there could be a timeshare situation just in general?
They just have like the longest history known to man of running the hot hand.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Last guy.
I still think Claiborne leads it. We have Claiborne projected ahead pretty considerably too. This is more of, you're playing large field. You want to take a flyer on, I think Tate is 3,800. Like you could sprinkle him into lineups on the basis that they run the hot hand. I don't love Claiborne for that same reason. I would rather play other guys, but they have a ceiling certainly. And NC State's defense has been terrible.
Oh yeah, NC State's a mess. That's not the problem.
They're a huge mess.
Big mess. Is there anyone from some of the, it's funny, like some of the premier teams on the slate, when I'm looking at, again, you can get all the stuff, the links are below, from our ownership to our projections, they're not jumping off the page. And I'm talking about Alabama, Ohio State, which we talked about a little bit, and then Georgia. Does Georgia have anybody? I mean, like guys like Lovett or even like Arian Smith. Are they getting any love, and should they be?
They're still running a rotation at receiver, even with Humphreys out. So it's pretty tough to get to them. I will say Lovett projects extremely well on FanDuel, where they've kept him in the gutter in terms of pricing, but that's about it. I don't think he's super viable on DraftKings.
Anything else before we make the switch to talk about FanDuel?
No, that's a good segue.
No, very good. Let's see. DK Cash, Holstein, Trey Harris, and Barber, or Shug, Tootin, and Brooks.
Probably the first side, I think. You'd have to read it again.
Yeah, I would go that side too. I actually don't mind any of those. It's hard with 3v3s, but yeah, I would go that side. All right, let's see what we got here on FanDuel. We're still making good time. We got about 15 minutes, and it is more of the same. No surprise. You've mentioned this a couple times about the overlap. Other guys, though, on FanDuel that maybe are worth talking about. You mentioned that Lovett really projects good there. What about Tennessee? You know, Tennessee's a team, you bet them. I like them as well. Certainly they could take them apart on the ground, but are Nico plus a couple a viable path over there?
I like Brew McCoy. He's too cheap. He's the only one that's actually playing a full route share right now. And people still love clicking Squirrel White and Chris Brazil. They're at like 60%. Brew's the only one consistently above 80. I don't like double stacks. Could they be coaxed into more pass heavy sets? They haven't been in that yet this year, perhaps. But I'm not sure that's the most likely as 13.5-point favorites.
On the other side of that game, Armstrong.
Oh, yeah. I don't like him as a player, but he is being targeted incessantly.
I don't really like Arkansas either, but there is no denying that they can give Taylor Green even a little time, which is debatable. That guy should be very busy. He's going to take a beating tonight. Tennessee's front is no joke. Let's see. Another guy, again, no surprise, UCF, Kobe Hudson, 8,400, reasonable. Florida, I think this is going to be a tough game. I do lean Gators in the game. That's not a super big knock on a guy like Hudson. Is he in the pool?
He's in the pool. Macro, I'm worried about him with Xavier Thompson redshirting. They don't have anyone good to catch the ball except for him. At what point does he start getting the Ted McMillan treatment and teams just put two guys on him, bracket him? I don't know. That's what teams should do because they don't have any other pass catchers who even have a pulse on their team. They're so bad at receiver.
Yeah.
Their receivers are horrifying.
Again, it's another show for another time. Is Eugene Wilson playable on FanDuel?
I think he's going to miss the game, but if he
plays,
yeah.
Is it crazy to play Caleb Johnson today? Go ahead. I can't wait to hear you answer this.
No, because he's so good.
But yes.
Man, at what point do we start getting teams treating Iowa like Michigan? He should have 30 carries today, though. So, I mean, could he still get there? Certainly. Like, if he averages 3 yards per carry on 30 carries,
he's going to need 30 carries.
They have a high school offense outside of him. And I guess Lachey, but they won't throw him the ball. So, Tim Lester's been a horrifying OC since he got there. And it might be just a talent acquisition thing. They might just not have anyone that's like above a Kent State level on their offense. So, I don't know.
Kent State catching a stray right at the end of the show, too. Poor guys. I was like in my Discord, people were like, man, this team sucks. They're as bad as UMass. Like, is that necessary? Come on. Let's say they're as bad as
Kent
UMass.
State. I mean, they're worse than UMass. Who said Kent State's as bad as UMass?
UTEP might be worse than all of them. And then Kennesaw. Kennesaw actually is the worst, I think. I hate to be the bearer of bad news for the Owls. When I look at this Caleb Johnson situation, I just worry about like Iowa State's good, and I get it. He had 25 for 189. I just worry about he's got 9 touchdowns in 4 games. It's not going to work like that today. It's just simply not against Ohio State's front. Best flex 3,700 or under. That's not Lacy. Is it Carney?
He's 38.
Oh, I didn't even look at that. That makes
37 or under. That's not Lacy. You are going to be sacrificing a ton of points, but Max Clare for Purdue, he's their number 1 receiver. Although he plays tight end, they're just so hurt at that position. He could be a potential pivot if you're getting crazy and playing chalk everywhere else. Andre Green, I mean, he might start for Virginia right now. I truly don't know how much he plays. You have Jabari Barber to Stone Min. I think he's somewhat interesting. That's about it. Now I'm looking at receivers, or I guess flexes.
Yeah, there's not much. This guy's certainly not 37. He's 47. Emmett Mosley, burst on the scene, 4,700. He had 7 for 48 and 1 against Clemson. You did mention, some of those games with Clemson are a little wonky because they've been destroying teams early, and we don't know. Is that a name that we should keep an eye on at the very least?
Probably not for this week, but you should keep your eye on him for next week because he split time with Ismail Cisse, who's been pretty good. I mean, Stanford's kind of got a sneaky wide receiver room. I want to see how this plays out because their QB's been terrible. Maybe if Lamson starts today and has a good game, he could take over and they would have a competent offense, but it's yet to be seen.
You know who's the guy we didn't talk about today is Nate Noel. I don't really know what to make of it, but he's another one. He had 22 and 24 carries in the last couple games, a boatload of yards. This is a good player. Is he in play today?
He is. I'm debating him, man. I'm got to make some tough decisions. What time do they play?
That's the first game. That's right at noon.
Sucks.
It's really quite unfortunate.
So I'm doing my high dollar stuff right now. I don't want to play 3 backs from the early window.
Just for flexibility purposes?
Yeah. What you're seeing right now, I anticipate happens throughout the day, which is going to be a fun day for me.
I mean, again, that's one of the many reasons we love it and why you want to get involved here at Stochastic, because things change. It's fluid situations. No doubt about it. Favorite flex play under 5K. Let's see what we can find for you, my friend.
Colin Lacy.
Yeah, that is going to be the perpetual answer for pay downs, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah. God, I hope SMU just absolutely wallows them. Banks or Noah Thomas?
Noah Thomas.
Yeah. I'm telling you, this Wegman situation is freaking me out. Even though I don't even if I attached myself to Texas A&M, what do I care? They do have a good boost on FanDuel, by the way. You should play that game. Even if you don't have an angle, blind boost that. Absolutely worth it. Is Elijah Badger in a shootout? Say Florida's receivers don't break in terms of other personnel. You think he could get there?
Yeah, I don't mind Badger. I actually like him. UCF secondary's been very, very bad.
Ollie Gordon or Mullings? Ollie Gordon, man, it's just not happening.
I mean, he's not even seeing all the work anymore.
No, they're a mess. I think Rocket Sanders is a sneaky play today. I agree with that. I could see that.
Yeah, you should play. What is Grayson McCall's price? I gotta fix my Linus.
Let's see. Grayson McCall. I can help you with that. Grayson McCall is 5,500. Do you know what it is, by the way? Is it an ankle, a knee, an arm?
I can't remember.
It just says undisclosed, and I don't remember what it is either.
I don't know what it is.
Let's see. Yeah, I can't find that either. When he suffered an undisclosed injury. Great. Very useful. Grand opening.
I got myself in a tough situation.
That's how we thrive. Brooks or Stribling?
Stribling.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to get there, but I'll mention him and feel free to correct me on anything. I like that Jennings has kind of secured that job. I still think there are situations, if it goes bad, that Preston Stone could weasel his way back into the situation, but he looked really good. Obviously, he's got some mobility. He was really efficient, though. The thing I worry about with SMU, maybe if they're trailing, it changes. He threw 19 times against TCU and 23 times against Florida State. Do you think that Jennings is in play? And if he is, would you just run him naked?
I'm worried about that Louisville pass rush, which is the best unit on their entire team. We saw kind of the downside of him last week when he took some sacks. So I'm not sure on him. He's too cheap. I do want to play some of him for sure. I don't think he's being projected correctly across like sports books, but I'm worried about his ceiling in that game.
Is Rodney Hammond viable, or is he just more someone that could?
No.
Okay, so there you go. Rocket Sanders or Allen?
Allen. Okay, where am I sitting in my lineups? Who do I have in my set that is
Holstein is what you want there.
I need to figure out who is in my lineup set that is out that I need to get out.
That'd probably be a good move. I recommend everyone watching again. First of all, we're going to push over 100 likes right now, and it's appreciate all that support. If you have questions that we don't get to, Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets. We still have a couple minutes though. You want Jackson Dort in that one. McCall or Holstein? Holstein. Michael Ford. We talked about him. I think there are better options in the pay down, but again, some decent. If you're punting running back, you're not going to have a lot of opportunities. I worry about Stanford in general, though. I'm not sold on that team. I think the game script's going to work against them. Carney, Noah Thomas, or Banks as last man in. It would be Carney for me.
Yes.
Ibuka or Stribling on FanDuel?
Ibuka or Stribling? Stribling.
Oklahoma State, man. Even though I don't like their team, we have seen time and time again, West Virginia's secondary, even though they rallied a little bit, it's disgustingly bad. And I would know because I bet them every single week. I don't think that's going to change here. Did we ever lock down the UVA wide receiver play? I mean, I don't think there's a consensus. I don't think we're going to know. It's just a couple of guys that might step up. We're flying blind, are we not?
Yeah. I mean, it's either Green or Gibson.
Yeah.
I think.
We think. Who the hell knows? I mean, these are unproven guys. These are guys with, under a couple of receptions at best. Reed and Stribling or Presley and Ryan Williams? I would go Reed and Stribling. Personally, have to play Hampton today? Definitely not have to. The volume is there. I think he's a really good play, and I like UNC to be more than competitive. They're getting a little healthier, but you definitely don't just have to do that. There's so many backs, and with the volume and the value, I should say, that opened up, a lot of different lineup constructions can be effective today. Is Bentley intriguing with Parrish Jr. being a game time decision? I think Parrish is going to play, and that may make it tough for a guy like Bentley.
Yeah, I think Bentley's like fourth string.
I loved him too. He was a really good player at one point. I think I know the answer to this. Alex Orgy in play on FanDuel. Are you trusting the Michigan option attack that they have become?
Nope.
Hampton or Reed? I would go Hampton. Do you like the Holstein Green pairing at QB? I could work with that. I know that Green at times has had some issues, particularly with decision making. That doesn't really hurt you as much as you would think. It actually could help the game script. He's still got mobility. The guy's been, basically 50 plus rushing yards in 3 straight. I like Garrett Green today.
100%.
At FanDuel early, Noah and Fields or Walker and Brooks. I'd go Noah and Fields. Noel and Fields, excuse me.
You keep doing your thing.
I'm doing it. I got us. Don't worry. Occasionally I step up on this show. I got you covered.
Thanks, buddy.
Kenny Johnson, Noah Thomas for me. Damn, value running back is risky with Reed and Noel on the board. Man, they are good, and that Noel work was insane. I agree. That's the thing. The opportunity cost at running back today is immense, and it's not just because we have great pay up options. It's more the mid range is so secure with guys that are consistently getting 20 plus carries. If you omit all of them to pay down, you better hope that your quarterback that you went to get or your pair of top end wide receivers are really doing a lot of work. And that's kind of what I worry about. To me, I'm coming at it more from a betting angle with some of these things. I worry about some of those teams with team totals that are not reasonable. And with a couple minutes left, by the way, we'll get to a couple more questions, but it's no better time to mention taking advantage of all this stuff that's out there. I talked about tails already. Bet365 sponsors this show. They do an awesome job. They are a sports book. They're now adding more and more states. If you are in a state that has Bet365 and you haven't gotten your $200, all you have to do, the link is below, you deposit $10. Bet $5 on any game we talked about, and win or lose, $200 is coming back to you in bonus bets. You could take that. You could bet it on baseball playoffs, bet it on hockey, bet it on more college football, bet it on whatever you want. It's a great opportunity to boost your bankroll. That stuff goes a long way. Taking advantage of boosts and promos is one of the most underutilized thing to grow a bankroll. You can use that money for DFS as well, obviously. Just money in your bankroll all across multiple things. So shout out to Bet365. You do have to be 21 plus, 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Mr. Griffey, I heard the Ollie Gordon comment, okay to play in the 20 to 50K tournament over their UNC back. I mean,
you could. If it's your GPP, like if that's your, I don't know,
stand.
Yeah, your leverage stand, you could definitely do that.
Yep. Yeah, again, it's all about kind of that risk reward, and that's why I love what our tools do there. Kind of highlights some of that. Yeah, Maccabee is a lock. That sums up this slate perfectly.
Maccabee.
No, just don't at Purdue.
He's not bad, but he's not a lock.
No, yeah, a lock. The word lock and Maccabee don't go together ever. Isaiah Bond and Brown, or Maccabee and Morin. I think he means Maccabee. Let's see. Let me see what I can find there. I'd go the Bond side. You mentioned that. It's just an insane target share. That guy has just been
Lewis Bond. Let's see. I hope he does something.
Okay.
Would be sick. Okay, let's see what's in the CSV I just put together. It's probably not great.
See what you've done.
Wow.
It's that kind of
been a while since I felt something like this.
Is it, I mean, just to sum it up, we only have a couple minutes left. Is this slate like uniquely crazy?
No, not really. I mean, just like there's a couple things I wasn't expecting, and then it's hard to talk through it on a show, update projections, and then get to my own CSV.
There's a juggling situation.
No, it's not like unique. If this had happened at 2:30 Central Time or something, it'd be no sweat.
Friend of the show.
Like, this is also a personal problem. I should probably just not play as much on the main slate when I'm doing all these things, you know?
Gotta do it.
But I can't do it. I can't control myself.
It's like on 2 games Monday Night Football slates. I say that every time, and then all hell breaks loose. Friend of the show and just friend and just all around good guy. EMAC. How can I tell you how Washington is showing as a slight favorite? I don't really get it, to be honest. I think that game is going to be like 14-10. Give you a little alpha. I bet the under. In that game. I think that Michigan is going to really slow the pace. They're 133rd in tempo. Washington's outside the top 100 as well.
I like Washington. I don't know if I'm going to take it, but that's where I would go.
It's going under. That much I know. Did we talk about McCall? We certainly did. But that's a weird situation.
I ended up with like 20% of him somehow. I didn't have a lot of time. But
you don't say. Mumfield versus Stribling. I have Eli.
I just answered him in Discord. If you have Eli, I would go
yeah, nice pairing.
Mumfield. Yeah.
It's a nice pairing. Favorite bet at noon. It's moved, and if it crossed 10, I wouldn't do it. If you can find 9.5 for Navy, fire it up. I think they absolutely roll Air Force.
I'm looking at the current lines right now. I might take Missouri right now. Are you still on that?
I'm going to use it in a boost. I didn't end up taking side because it's Wegman situation. I'm not.
I'll wait for it live.
I ended up betting the over in the Ball State game. That's talk about disgusting.
The over? You're a psychopath.
I don't even care. That defense so bad. I know. I flipped, and now I feel gross about it. Slayer, appreciate the kind words. Just really, really appreciate it. You guys make the show. You know, when all hell's breaking loose here, and we're flying around, just you guys asking those questions, helping us out. It makes all the difference, and it makes the show really entertaining and hopefully very insightful. And we have done it. You're hydrating. I'm losing my voice. All hell's breaking loose.
Yeah, you had to talk a lot today. Thank Ben for holding the show down while I'm
every so often. I step up. Good vibes. I'm gonna go check on all my soccer bets, and I hope I've been rewarded with goals, or in the case of some of these games, not goals. We're gonna find out right now. But again, everyone, appreciate it. Hope to see you more in Discord. Make sure you sign up for all the valuable assets that we have here at Stokastic. We'd love to have you as part of the family. And for the third member of this team, he's rocking the Phillies gear behind the scenes. He's ready to go. Mike Lawrence making this show go. Couldn't do it without him. Appreciate him and appreciate you guys. On that note, make some money today. From me, from Matt, and from Mike, good luck, friends. Enjoy the day. See you next time.